Hi, it's Leslie Meredith with Breakbulk Events and Media. I'm here at Breakbulk Europe, and we have just finished a session on CO2 emissions, measuring, etc. And I have Rik Arends from the panel, Smart Freight Center, with me in the studio. Welcome, Rik.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and good to have the discussions about measuring and reporting of CO2 emissions.
Yeah, absolutely. So, tell us sort of the fundamental discussion around this topic.
Yeah, so within the industry, it's essential that we start to report our greenhouse gas emissions for those that have their own cargo and the fuel that they burn, as well as for those cargo owners that are kind of contracting those services from service providers and carriers. The biggest discussion now is like, say that you have a carrier on one vessel and you have multiple cargo owners on this one vessel. Who is responsible for what part of the emissions? And how do you allocate this fairly between what for the carrier and the different cargo owners is? And that's at the core of the discussions, and it's super exciting to see this industry coming together to do so and to have this discussion and come up with a kind of a standard that is backed by the industry accordingly.
Okay, so you've had this in two parts. You did the session
Yes.
In the main stage just now, and you also did a group with the Executive Summit on Tuesday. So you've gotten a lot of input. How might you summarize what you've heard from different groups?
That's a fair question, because there were a lot of different points, but I think the biggest stumbling block and the biggest discussion that we currently have is how do we ensure the main concept of is freight tons. So you buy a freight ton of transport, whatever is greater, the volume or the mass. How do we ensure that this is also aligned to the wider industry in the road freight sector, the maritime sector, the container lines, that are reporting in line with the GLEC framework and reporting in line with the ISO standard that is being published? How do we ensure that this alignment exists? And at the same time do justice to the breakbulk sector. So the core of the discussion is really about how do we allocate emissions. Take an example, and we're going to do a few examples of this as well in the future, but take a cargo owner is moving a coil of steel and a windmill, a part of a windmill. That part of a windmill is way lighter but very voluminous, whereas the steel coil is much heavier. How do we allocate the emissions from that particular vessel equally or fairly between those two cargo owners? It's a fundamental debate, because it in the end also resonates about how do you do the carbon pricing mechanisms, how do we kind of, who's responsible for what part in the journey accordingly.
So, do you have a formula for that yet?
That's what we're currently figuring out. We're hoping to have something.
I'm hoping you have some really good mathematicians in there.
We do.
Okay.
So we're specialized in this subject. So the Smart Freight Center is really dedicated towards this. And we founded and have this discussion for the last 10 years already in multiple sectors. And it's exciting now to see the Breakbulk coming along on this as well. And it's good also to have this heated discussion, because I think that this only allows to advance the market accordingly and to come together, as well as that there is a genuine interest to make this a fair and equal standard. So quite pleased.
Okay. All right. So what's your timeline? What's the plan for the next X number of months?
Exactly. So we've been starting this journey about a year ago when we first kind of assembled the group. And today, last Tuesday, we had a further kind of in-depth discussions particularly about the freight tons and the allocation mechanisms, as well as the definitions of distance. And is this actual distance or the shortest feasible distance, and how does that look like? And now we're looking to kind of work towards the Breakbulk Houston conference, where we will be having a kind of a subsequent in-person meeting as well of the industry, with a view that by the end of the year there is a standard that can be used by the industry at large.
Are you going to make it?
We'll hope so. Absolutely.
I love it. I mean, that's very ambitious, but it sounds like you've made a lot of progress.
Absolutely.
And here at Europe, you have so many different sectors represented, different companies, different points of view, and it's great that you're able to bring you know, these various contingencies or contingents together?
It's absolutely critical because we need to make sure that this is a fair representation for the carrier, the service provider, as well as the cargo owners on this context. And that's why it's so an interesting dynamics within the group, that you have the cargo owners on the one side that are pushing, as well as some of the carriers on the other side that are trying to meet about what is fair and make their investments worthwhile accordingly.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we will catch up again in Houston at Breakbulk Americas towards the end of September.
Excellent. Looking forward to that.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rik.
Thank you.